And do you think you could go without a car for a week?
No. Not a chance. Not a chance.
I definitely could.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I probably could, yes.
I would say no, I wouldn't want to do without it for a week.
A week, yes.
Probably.
Maybe,
Yeah.
if we had to.
I guess my way of dealing with it would be to put stuff off until that week is over, and then I'd be able to deal with it. So yeah, probably not.
Yeah. So would you consider yourself pretty car dependent?
That's funny, but yes and no, because I work downtown, so I C-train majority of the time. I really only use my vehicle on the weekends, but you know, those times are essential, and so I would say, yeah, it's pretty tough to get around here without a vehicle for sure.
Railway is what was the main driver for Calgary being situated where it is. And over time, the horse and buggy were the main modes of transportation, of course, walking for many years. And then over time, the trolleys and transit started to become a factor up until the 1940s and 50s. And that's when the car was introduced to Calgary, like any other city in North America. And so the car dramatically changed the way people can get around. It has had an impact on how we organize our city, the urban form, the land use. All of those things have changed dramatically with the advent of the car. Some of those things became less so. Obviously, the horse and buggy, the trolleys and such that used to exist are no longer here. But we now have LRT, we have cycling, we have walking is starting to make a comeback.
The transportation hierarchy, as we call it in Calgary, really sets the place of each mode. And really what it's about is starting with pedestrians and saying they really should be the focus of travel in Calgary. Every trip by car, by transit starts as a pedestrian. And really what we're striving to do is to create a city that's based on the scope of a person, not the scope of a car. And I think the challenge we have in order to meet that issue is really around fighting 60 years of culture and development around the car. And we see everything. I've heard the comment that Calgary's a great place if you're a car. And if aliens came from outer space and looked, they'd think this place was built for cars. So it's really going to be a cultural shift, and it's a shift in the way people think, the way designers design, the way engineers think about changing that scope back down to the person.
A complete street is basically a street that accommodates all the users of it. It's not enough to just build stripe-in lanes and expect that to meet everyone's needs. It's providing dedicated bike facilities on that street, so that may mean a bike lane. That may mean something better, like a cycle track, if the conditions are ripe for that situation. When you get in downtown, it probably means a cycle track because you need that separation from the motorists. There's too many conflicts going on. For pedestrians, it means having adequate sidewalks, adequate width sidewalks, and crossing opportunities to get across the road, and looking at transit as well. So it's basically a street that accommodates all users.
Making public transit services the preferred choice for Calgarians is one of our biggest challenges, and it's not an easy one. It's a cultural shift. It's a way that people look at their mobility in Calgary and the flexibility of transit services. So when we see our competition with the car and the kind of flexibility the private automobile gives, it makes it a real challenge for us. So we have to look at the entire package that a transit service may provide a customer, that it has environmental benefits, it has economic benefits, it has social benefits, that you get to know the folks in your neighborhood at your bus stop as you wait for the bus. My name's Doug Morgan. I'm the director of Calgary Transit. We try to make it as attractive a choice as we can. We know that in all segments and all trips it'll be difficult for us to compete, but we try to put it out there as an option and make it as flexible as possible and try to generate as much ridership as we can from the resources that we have to provide.
You know, it's hard to admit that I don't drive, and I've kind of made that choice for one reason or another, because you really are going against the grain.
My name is Bob. I live in Sunnyside, which is just across the river from downtown. And I've lived in Calgary since 1974. I started going car-free 20 years ago. And I went completely car-free in May of 2000.
My name is Troy. I've lived in Calgary for 33 years. I live with my wife and 3 children. We are car light. We have 1 minivan, and I transport myself to work via bicycle or transit.
I'm Carla. I live in Rocky Ridge in Calgary's far northwest corner with my husband and son, and we are car light. We only have 1 vehicle.
I'm Ryan. I've lived in Calgary for 17 years. Currently I live in Mayland Heights, which is in the northeast quadrant. It's about 10 kilometers outside from the downtown core, or a 20-minute bike ride. I've been car-free for 3 years now, and 2 years of that I've been a 365-day-a-year cyclist.
I'm Elaine. I live in the Beltline, which is in the center of the city. I've been carless for 9 months now, and I managed to get around with transit and Shank's Pony.
What's Shank's Pony?
Feet.
My name is Warren, and I've lived in Calgary for 35 years. My wife and I raised 2 sons in the southwest community of Haysboro, which was a new subdivision back in 1958. I live 13 kilometers from my work, and I ride my bike most days.
My name's Johanna. I've lived in Calgary most of my life. I'm 40 years old and I've never held a driver's license. I live with my 2 children, ages 12 and 5, and my partner who does most of the driving for his work, but I get myself around on bicycle and transit.
And I believe it was in 1972 that we had another plan that dramatically reduced the impact of that 1968 plan. It eliminated many of the freeways and new bridges and river crossings, and it downgraded many roads. And so that was a big changing point in Calgary's history. After that, though, there was another boom. and the city started to grow, and we had more pressure for more roads and more freeways. And so there was another subsequent plan that kind of went back the other way, but not nearly as extreme as that 1968 plan. And so it goes in ebbs and flows depending on the politics of the day, depending on the growth rate of the city. All these things are factors in how the city is formed over time. My name is Don Mulligan, and I'm Director of Transportation Planning at the City of Calgary.
And active transportation is basically non-motorized traffic. It's bicycling, it's walking, it's getting people from the transit stop to where they're going, whether it's walking or biking. So we have really good data for the downtown, and that continues to get better every year. When you talk about the broader city, it's a bit of a mixed bag. We rely on census data a lot, and that only comes every several years. We also do other ways to count bicycling, but we haven't seen a substantial change in the numbers of riders when you get outside the urban core. But we're also hoping to develop some new strategies to help monitor that data, localized ways. And so we're going to be instituting a new annual summertime bike count to help gauge what the ridership is across the city. My name is Tom Thivner. I'm the City of Calgary's bicycle coordinator.
It is possible, I think, is a point that doesn't really land home until you try it.
Yeah.
Until you actually get on a bike or start taking the train on a regular basis and just put some effort into it, put some energy, put some time into it, and through experience it becomes quite natural, I think, over time.
And enjoyable.
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
it's
not
fun.
a chore. It's fun.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we are in a real minority, and it's hard to find people that are like-minded. I mean, I look at all the minivan moms, and I do feel a little bit of like, well, are they looking down at me? You know, what are they thinking? And I know when I'm walking in a snowstorm and they're in their climate-controlled cars, it's hard to not feel jealous. But, you know, these sorts of things run through your head a lot because you think, well, you know, without a car, are my employment opportunities limited, or am I a bad parent because I'm not ferrying my kid around to all these activities? And it's hard to find that support from other people because they just don't really make themselves known.
Yeah, I felt that too, especially the parenting part. You know, winters, especially in Calgary, you know, I've got my son bundled up and it's -40 and we're waiting for the bus. And I mean, he's fine and he's a resilient Canadian kid.
When you're in the backcountry, it's really important to layer. A couple other things, you don't want cotton next to your skin, you want something that's going to pull that moisture away. So something like a wool or a synthetic that's not going to hold that moisture is really important. Those same ideas transferred to the urban adventure as well. There isn't bad weather, there's just bad gear. You can always dress for whatever weather you're going to get, whether it's snow, whether it's water, whether it's cold. You can always dress to meet those, to keep yourself comfortable in any of those environments.
What's most challenging for me riding a bike and having that being my sole means of transportation is my cat. How do I take my cat to the vet on my bicycle, right? Obviously it's not practical. You can't put her in your backpack and just off you go, right? So I end up having to carry her, you know, and it's awkward. And on the bus, and I don't want to take her on the bus because people are allergic to cats, you know, it's kind of an awkward thing. So I end up just carrying her on foot and she's squirming around in her kennel. So things like that are good reasons to have a car available. You know, like I don't think any of us are really against cars. It's just using them where necessary, I think is better.
I personally own two vehicles. I have a winter car and a summer car. One for the summer, just to enjoy more of a sports car, and in the winter something that's a little bit more traction in the winter with winter tires and everything to be able to get around in the winter.
Which means that altogether we have 3 cars because I hate his summer car. And it's not a practical car for a family. And then the winter car, I guess we had debated going down to just 1 car over the winter, but just logistically we decided someone decided that it wouldn't work.
I decided it wouldn't work.
So the minute I mentioned the word transit, he was looking for a 3rd car. So for me, I guess in the other communities that I've lived in, and even here, it's really easy to use transit, at least to get to work and back. So I didn't have a problem with using that as a solution, whereas Shelton was very resistant to the idea.
I bought a car 3 days later. I'm the president and founder of Beyond.ca. It's a car forum for car enthusiasts, and it's the largest car forum in Canada. That's my second job, I guess. And one of the reasons why I own so many cars is because of the car forum I promoted. I'm a car guy, and I talk a lot about cars and just to be part of the community.
Shelton and I had been discussing the idea of using public transit as like a piece of our daily commute for probably about a week or 2 before we heard that there was this challenge on going out there. And so the minute I heard it, I knew that Shelton would be more than willing to be up for a challenge, and that hopefully going through it, it would finally be my chance to actually get him on transit, and he might change his mind about our daily commutes.
I like to challenge myself, so I do a lot of strange challenges, and this is one of the ones that I want to. I haven't, ridden a bus for over 20 years, and I just love driving, going to work. That's my 20 minutes of peace going to work and just being able to, have my own space kind of thing. So transit will be a complete huge change and something I wanted to do just to see how I can handle it.
Today's going to be a pretty easy day. I don't really have a lot on my schedule other than going to the office and coming back home afterwards. So it'll give me a good chance to get used to the transit schedule, how long it takes to get to and from work, and if it's busy on the C trains, and just kind of getting used to the whole routine of everything. It'll be a little more complicated as I have more meetings in the next few days, so we'll see how it goes.
When I moved out to Arbor Lake, I just sort of had it in my head that that's it. I'm stuck with a car from now on. So I'm hoping that over the course of the week that I'll come to realize that it is still doable to leave the car at home, even though I am living way out in the suburbs.
It's not that far out in the suburbs, but I think it's just to find out if it's possible. Without doing it, I would have no idea if it's possible to be able to go car-free living out in Arbor Lake. And we'll try to answer a lot of questions this week. I've looked at it logistically and everything, and I can't see it being efficient and be possible to go completely car-free living out here. But we'll see. Bus ride wasn't so bad. Not too many people on it, so everyone got a seat. "42 minutes and 18 seconds. So my first mistake, I took the wrong bus on the transfer on the way to Kincora. I took the 420, but apparently there's two 420s. One goes to North Point and goes the wrong way. So the bus driver was pretty helpful, told me where to get off and take the Kincora, but now I have to wait another 15-20 minutes out here and wait for the proper bus, and hopefully I won't be late to Kincora. So today I'm heading in about an hour early, just because I know that I will be on a pretty tight schedule and I'll be traveling a lot on transit, so it's going to minimize my time in the office. So I got to get in a little earlier and just try to maximize my time in the office today. Made it in today, 41 minutes 18 seconds. I think, if my memory serves me right, it's exactly the same as yesterday. Like I said, the C train was really full today, so I didn't get a chance to work at all. My 10 o'clock meeting ran a little late. It was overran by about 15 minutes, so I missed one of the first trains to Northeast, where I have to go meet one of our contractors to discuss work, our weekly lunch meetings that we have. So I got to give them a call when I get a chance to let them know that I'm going to be about 15 or 20 minutes late. Next train is coming in about 5-10 minutes here, so I got to run and... The train got here about 15 minutes early, so 15 minutes early for when the bus is supposed to arrive. So I decided to walk the 5 or 6 massive blocks over to the restaurant instead of waiting 15 minutes for the bus. It's a pretty nice day out. Feels like 2 or 3 degrees, so should be a pretty good walk. Made it back from lunch. That trip took 45 minutes and 31 seconds, and in time for my 1:30 meeting, so it worked out pretty well. Yeah, pretty accurate. So now we're just walking to the grocery store here to do some grocery shopping and figure out how to get them home, because I didn't bring anything with me, and neither did Susie, so. So we realized we didn't have enough change for the bus.
Well,
one of us. And buses don't accept credit cards, so we've decided to walk home from the grocery store with all our groceries here. Not too far of a walk, but hopefully we double bagged everything enough and they'll survive the trip back. Now we just have to figure out how to walk home from this parking lot without climbing a fence.
The technology in backpacks has come a long way in the last couple of years. There's certainly a lot more than just a standard duffel bag. So probably the most important thing you want to look for when you're looking at a bag, especially one that potentially is going to be carrying a lot of weight, groceries for example, is something with a lot of support. So you want a really good thick shoulder strap that's going to distribute the weight, and most importantly, you want something that's going to distribute the weight through your hips. So you want a really supportive padded hip belt.
Sidewalk. So yeah, I don't know, pretty good walk. Not too bad. If it was colder, it would have sucked. But today's temperature was pretty good. Basically, on the way to work, me and Susie took all of our gear with us. We had a lot of food for our charity drive this morning. We went and took the bus over to the Crowfoot station where there were no trains there and tons of people. That's when I got called in at work right away because there's an emergency at the office. I had to deal with it, and I ended up having to do a conference call on the bus. But I had a full backpack full of ingredients for a fundraiser for lunch today, and carrying soup and everything with me. So, and then the trains finally showed up, and it was just completely packed because it was late and there were so many people waiting for the train. Got on the train and I'm trying to do a conference call. People are jammed and all over the place, and I got this huge backpack. I'm moving around, and it was just really frustrating because I was just hitting people and everything. But yeah, not really much to say about that. Another cold morning. Not too bad, 39 minutes today, so made it here pretty quick. It's 12:30 in the afternoon, or 12:40 in the afternoon, and I'm heading out to a doctor's appointment in Parkdale at Landmark Collaborative Health. So yeah, easy ride there, just one single bus, and that gets me right to the door, kind of 5-minute walk. Just leaving the doctor's office now. Yeah, everything checked out well, so that's the good news. Bad news was I was 5 minutes late for my appointment, but it wasn't too bad just because, you know, doctor's always running late anyway, so it's not a big deal. So yeah, now just heading back on the same bus to go back downtown and make it back to the office to finish off the day. So he's going to drive there. I'm going to take the bus, so we're going to see how much longer it is for real driving versus busing. So, as you can see behind me, there's a lot of traffic. It's rush hour right now, so hopefully it'll work to my advantage, but I guess the bus has to travel through rush hour too, so who knows how that's going to work. Made it here for dinner. Total time of my trip, 52 minutes and 35 seconds. Yeah, Kenny beat me by a huge margin as expected, but it was you know, it's actually a pretty close drive to downtown, so I was surprised that it took so long to actually get here. But obviously the 15-minute lateness for the bus didn't really help the situation, so off to dinner. It's so much nicer to have some sun in the morning. One of the advantages of coming in a little later is just being able to see some sun, not as depressing in the mornings.
For current scheduled times. Bus stop 8603, route 299. Next bus in 6 minutes. Following bus at 10.
6 minutes? Next bus. Going to the Y in Crowfoot. It's about a 20-25 minute walk. I'm going to be Christmas tree shopping there, so I'm going to carry a hand stroller of some sort to bring the Christmas tree back. Second trip would be going to the mall. I got to go to the mall and do some Christmas shopping.
and then I gotta make it back before 4 o'clock to do some work because I have a bunch of scheduled work that have to be done for the office at 4 o'clock. So that's my trip today. Hope I can get everything to fit together and work well.
I'm gonna pick out one of these trees and walk back home. It's minus 18 today, so it's a little cold, but it's not too bad if you're walking. Standing around is a little bit cold. They look ridiculous. Everyone's staring at me. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. "28 minutes and 35 seconds. Super slippery out there, and yeah, there's a card that I could have used. Ridiculous. From Crowfoot YMCA to my house, it's all uphill, and it was minus 18 today. Funny thing is minus 18 wasn't that cold when you're walking, compared to the other night waiting for the bus for 25 minutes in minus 10, which was way colder. But yeah, the problem was the fact that it was so icy and uphill, and pulling this huge 10-foot tree back home was not easy. It was a lot of cardio, pretty much, and I'm in decent shape, but up those hills, man, it was tough. Gonna stay home tonight and watch a movie. I'm supposed to go out tonight to my friend's party. He lives downtown, but that doesn't start until about 10 o'clock tonight, and by the time the party's over, it'll be 1 in the morning. There's no buses. I'm not going to take I'm doing this for charity as well, so I don't want to cheat, and I don't want to stay at his house because tomorrow morning I've got a lot of commuting to do to get to my nephew's birthday party in Sunridge. So I decided to just skip that. So yeah, a lot of change plans, just things aren't going my way the last few days, but I don't want to cheat. I'm not going to take a cab, so I'm staying home instead. So yeah, that's about it, I think. And until tomorrow, last day. Very happy it's the last day. I've missed my car. I can't wait to get back into my car. And yeah. Day number 7. It's the last day of my car-free week, and I'm happy today because it is my last day on transit. And so today's trip really was just to my nephew's birthday party out in Stir Crazy by Sunridge Mall. Had to make the trip out there. Usually it's a 25-minute ride, but today using transit it took 1 hour and 15 minutes to get there. 1 hour and 25 minutes to get there. And on the way home, it took 1 hour and 15 minutes. Overall this week, it's been a frustrating experience, but it's been an eye-opener as well. Would I ever do this again? Probably not. Looking through all my notes that I made throughout the week, I spent an additional 13 and a half hours by using transit versus using a car. And, and I'm really, really picky when it comes to, time management. So I like to get to places on time. There's no guarantees or anything on using transit and getting there actually on time. Unless you plan on showing up early. And that's, again, even adds more to the commuting time and whatnot In terms of the transit system, yeah, getting to and from work, that's about it. I would not use it or rely on it to get anywhere else, especially suburb to suburb transport. The city really needs to get their management guys to actually do some of these trips and maybe even do a carless week to see what it would be like for them to use transit as purely as their only mode of transportation, because it's a real eye-opener.
This is the best question. Do we use public transit? Do I use public transit? I do, not as much as I'd like. I've made a housing choice that probably isn't optimal for transit service, but one of the goals of the management team of Calgary Transit is once per week on average to take transit. So to be out there with our employees to see what they face. So I have a fairly long commute on the bus of about 100 minutes with 2 transfers. So I get to feel what it's like when you have to make those transfers. But it's invaluable to go through the experience of our customers.
Well, the car culture evolved over many, many years, and those of us that cycle sometimes think that the bicycle should have been invented after the car, given the amount of efficiency that it provides. It's an evolution, I guess, as if enough infrastructure is built and enough people try it, it will gradually catch on to a different way of transporting ourselves.
It's sort of like the cigarettes thing. You know, when cigarettes caught on and became popular, no one really knew what the health effects were, right? And it wasn't until those became apparent that campaigns against smoking started happening and smoking started to reduce in our culture. When the car was invented, it was this marvelous piece of magic.
It replaced horses that were making the cities very dirty.
Yeah, exactly. So what emerged around that and sort of collected around that was this celebration of the vehicle as a symbol of our progress, right? And we started designing our cities around it. And then eventually we had started basing the entire economy around it. And so it's sort of this cyclical thing where how do you break out of it? You know, because we have the city designed around the car. We have the economy designed around the oil. How do we change that?
One of the things that I always come across traveling around and talking to people about this idea of putting the brakes on and trying to do things at the right speed and slow down and so on, is the tension that we're all going to confront, which is how do you reconcile one person slowing down the individual within a system that isn't moving in that same direction? And there's no easy answer to that question. I think any kind of social reform, any kind of culture quake, any kind of cultural revolution involves moving on 2 flanks, the individual and the collective. But there are always going to be pressure points, friction. And I think we're in the early stages of this cultural change towards remembering how slow is useful. And I'm not sure exactly how it will play out. I mean, I think we also have to remember that people talk about systems as though they're fully formed phenomena that just arrive out of the ether. That's not the case. Systems are an expression of all of our individual desires and acts. We live in democracies. We vote for our leaders. We pay for bureaucrats to do what they do. So I think we have to always remember that, yes, we can make changes in our individual lives, but we also have to make sure we're engineering a ripple effect so that we try and demand different things from the powers that be and push the system in the direction that we find more easy to do individually. And I think once those things start to come together, that's when the real magic will begin to happen. My name is Honoré, and I am the author of 3 books, In Praise of Slow, Under Pressure, and The Slow Fix.
And you're okay with that? No, I'm just kidding.
You were going to say that.
Giving it up the go for a week might be okay.
No, it's true.
If our family went without a car for a week, I think I would be very annoyed because Leo would shriek a lot. Oh.
I actually have very little experience with driving. I don't drive. At one point, I did take lessons, and I don't know. There's something about a really dangerous machine that I'm in charge of that made me nervous. It just makes me really nervous, and so as a result, I don't drive.
I've been driving since I was 15, and I love to drive. I love the car. I'm maybe more of a nervous driver since I've had the kids, but I find the car really convenient. I have often thought of what our lives might be like without a car. I thought it might be interesting, but at this point I think it would be difficult in terms of the kids' activities and time-wise and just convenience factor. It's I find it's good to have a car, and where I work now, it's a part of town that's far away from where we live, so much more convenient to drop one of the kids off at school and drive than to even consider taking public transportation. So on a typical day when I do use the car, I'll drop our youngest son off at school, and on the days I work, I take the car to work. On the days I don't, I'll be running errands, or ironically enough, I'll drive to the gym to have a workout. And then I come home, and then I try and do as much as possible on foot. And if we do need to get Leo after school, sometimes I'll drive, but sometimes Alec will walk to get him.
Thank you.
So our carless week began with a snowstorm, and actually the anticipation of it was worse than the actual storm. It wasn't too bad. James and I walked to the bus stop, and his school bus came on time, and my bus came on time, and it was almost a relief to take the bus rather than have to drive to work.
I like to think of myself as not being car dependent, but I mean, really that's not true. I'm dependent on AGA driving, and us having a car from time to time, or even quite often. Yeah, I go pick up Leo from school, and I do it on foot. I've taken both Leo and James to activities on the bus. If I need to go downtown, I take the train. That all takes extra time. And if everything we did, we're taking that extra amount of time that it takes to rely on public transportation, I'm not sure how we would handle our normal day. When I took Leo to school on the Monday morning, it was snowing a lot, and I was kind of afraid that the bus would be late and we would be late for school, and really it all worked out. The bus was right on time. We got to school okay. Could be funner walking home if it wasn't so snowy, but all in all, it went well. So I took James to fencing on Monday night, and took probably about half an hour. We took a bus down Southton Drive, took the C train, and then walked to the Talisman Centre.
39th Avenue Station. To get to Chinook, please use the shuttle bus service from this station.
fencing lesson was about an hour, and we did the opposite of what we'd done to get there to go back. Again, took maybe 40 minutes along with waiting time.
So Tuesday really stands out for me because for me it was the most frustrating day. The kids had dentist appointments in the morning, so I took them down to the appointment. We walked down, and then we had to meet up with Alec because we had to take them to two different schools. So Alec pretty much had to take the morning off from working so we could do that. And I took James to school, and Alec took Leo. And then the bus connections from where James's school is, they weren't very good. I ended up waiting maybe half an hour, and I just felt that morning was kind of a bit of a waste of time. If we had had the car, I could have taken both kids to the appointment and then had them back at school within like 5-10 minutes. So that maybe wasn't the best representation of what being without a car would be. It just wasn't a very efficient day, I thought, in my mind. And I'm not sure how you could make that more efficient without a car, just using public transport.
So Wednesday evening, I took Leo to karate, and it was different in two ways, actually. Leo was training for a tournament, so he was going twice that week, which meant we split it up. I went with him on Wednesday, Agate had gone with him on Monday. And the other big difference, of course, is that we took the bus. So I don't think Leo minded. I sort of felt kind of like a fool dressed in pajama-like things, especially because I had a coat over most of the gi, so you couldn't tell it was a karate outfit. And I knew when the bus was coming. It had worked well for Aga on Monday. And it was a little bit late on Wednesday, which made me anxious because I thought, we're going to be late. Peter was with us, he was filming us. And yeah, I hate it when buses are late, which they are. As it turned out, we got there in good time, so we weren't actually late. And it was good, actually. It was nice being with Leo on the bus. He enjoys riding the bus.
Okay.
All right, ready? Shoot on Mizuki. You just keep area punch. So you step back, knees, land, then punch. Land and punch. Punch it into your center. Okay. Yes. Ready?
that was actually what I was least looking forward to, was the trip to work, and it didn't end up being nearly as bad as I had thought. We're on a really good route here, and the bus comes maybe every 5 minutes, so it was really convenient. And I had a chance to read my book. I didn't have to focus on traffic, so it ended up being a really good experience. And I might do it more often. I might take the bus instead of driving to work. So I'm coming out, James. At noon, I picked James up at the bus stop, and then we made plans to go grocery shopping with the jogging stroller, which was an interesting experience. We basically walked, it was just down the hill to the grocery store. The one tricky part was maneuvering the jogger. There were some stairs that we had to take the jogger down, and James helped me. And then there was another man there who helped us take it all the way down the stairs. And it was really straightforward using the jogger. We filled it up at the grocery store, and then on the way back we had to take a longer way just because we couldn't take the jogger onto the stairs. It was quite heavy with the groceries. The one thing I found was I didn't do like a full shop, so I can't imagine doing a really big grocery shop unless I learned to maybe pack the jogger in a better, more efficient way, because it didn't seem like we could fit very much stuff in there.
Yeah, we've been to Aggie Days a lot. Usually I take the boys, and since I don't drive, we usually go on the train. So it was no big deal, except for the weather, because it was cold. It was a cold day, just walking to the C train station and then hanging around at, I guess it's Victoria Park, waiting for the train back. I've had better days. I wasn't all that happy all day. As it turns out, I guess I was coming down with the flu, because I just sort of lay down when we got home, which is no judgment on the transit system.
So Sunday was our last day without a car, and it was a little bit of a different day than we had planned. It ended up being another snowstorm, so our carless week started with a snowstorm and it ended with a snowstorm. And also Alec wasn't feeling well that day, so normally we would have walked to church, but we decided to skip that morning. And in the afternoon, Leo had his first swimming lesson, so we decided to actually walk there. I thought it would be easier than trying to coordinate buses and bus schedules, and it took us about half an hour, and it was just nice to get out, even though it was snowing.
Historically, Calgary has grown almost entirely on the outside. For the last 20 years or so, the growth has been basically 100% on the outside of the city. And as the city gets older and more spread out, it becomes more difficult to do that. And at the same time, a lot of the inner parts of the city, established parts of the city, were shrinking in size. We used to have 4, 5 people per household. Now it's 2.5 or so. So you have less and less people, but you have capacity. You have the pipes, you have the roads, you have the infrastructure still exists. So when the growth is happening all on the outside, you're not taking advantage of the capacity that exists in the city that's already there. And of course, it's a lot cheaper to use some of the city that's already there instead of just adding and adding and adding on the outside. And so that's a very big challenge that has always existed in Calgary, and we're starting to address that. And we expect to make some progress over the coming decades.
I think the perception of Calgary, because of the oil and gas industry, is that everybody is rich and has a large disposable income, and car ownership is one of those ways to flaunt the cash around. Mm-hmm. So if you decide not to do that, is there that perception that you're poor?
To me, Canada is a very car-dependent, even car-obsessed society. I live in Europe. Old cities built on a human scale that really encourage people to walk, to move at a human pace. Canadian cities, especially the West, are much more spread out, big distances. People just feel compelled to get behind the wheel of a car. But alongside that, there's a cultural pressure and imperative to have a car. People express themselves in Canada through the kind of car they have, whether it's a roadster, a sports car, or a big muscly pickup truck. It's kind of like a badge of who you are, or a way of expressing yourself to the world. The flip side of a car-obsessed culture is that people who don't have a car feel marginalized, denigrated, vilified. They're the great unwashed. It's almost like a sign of failure. Why don't you have a car? What's the matter with you?
Yeah, there is a huge cultural thing in our society that you have to have a car. It's sort of a rite of passage, like you were saying. You start with a bicycle and then you transition as an adult into a car, and that's just the natural order of things. But for me, when I went away from the car and back to a bicycle, it was like an awakening. It was like, oh my goodness, I don't need a car. I don't actually require one in my situation.
For me, it's always been a mix and hard to distinguish the economy, environment, society. And I started bicycle commuting. I rediscovered the bicycle in '74. I was living out in Parkdale and working downtown, and started bike commuting just in nice weather because it was a nice thing to do, and there was that, at that time, red shale path along the Bow River, and it was a really pleasant beginning and end to the day.
There's kind of a new way of thinking that's out there. I'm one of that group of thousands that was in that article. I remember reading it myself, and I think it's coming. It's folks want change. They realize that things cost more money these days. We need to pay more attention to our health. They're starting to take those messages seriously. The environment, all these things that for the world tomorrow is going to make an impact, and we're the ones here now, so we need to think about it today.
And we as citizens have responsibilities in how we manage our own transportation. I think, like you said, if you don't need to drive, let the people who do need to drive have the space on the road.
Okay, from the top. Okay. Yeah. Take a break. I don't think he knows about taking breakfast, Pip.
We want lunch. After lunch.
And with all these glorious things we have today, it seems that history repeats itself. We tend to find issues with them. Cigarettes at one time were great. Sugared cereal was great. Vehicles were great at one time, and maybe we're at a crossing point now, where we're realizing things like, well, the environment's great, our health is great, and what does that mean? That means, you know, maybe a change in our attitude and change in our lifestyles, and some of us are starting to, you know, become more willing to make those changes, and we find ways of doing that.
The car is still
with
great.
What we have.
The car is still great.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just, the cost is starting to be felt a little bit more. And it's
in the healthcare system, and manufacturing roads is prohibitively expensive.
Well, I think the roots of the quick fix culture go back a long way. If you rewind to early man on the savannah in Africa, there was not a lot of incentive to sit back, stroke your chin, and take the long Aristotelian view, was there? It was all about survival in the moment. So the reward circuitry in the brain and the body is all set up to give us that payback for going for the quick kill and the quick thrill. So we have that biological basis that already tilts us into the arms of the quick fix. But then, of course, since then, on top of that, we've erected a culture that pushes us even further in that direction, that demands fast solutions, an impatient culture that expects everything to happen instantly. And so you put those two things together, and I think it explains why we find ourselves on this endless carousel of quick fixes. Quick fixes go wrong, we scratch our heads, and go back to making more quick fixes.
We know we can't just build infrastructure and expect people to come to those facilities overnight. It does take some education on the bicyclist's behalf on how to share the road, how to ride with traffic, whether there's a bike lane present or not. Also, you know, it's necessary to educate motorists on how all this new bike infrastructure works, how to make a right turn across it, for example. But it's also an opportunity to educate, encourage Calgarians to bicycle. We already know it's a great, healthy tool. Saves you money if you don't drive as much. And we know we have a decent network of pathways as well as residential bikeways out there now, and a developing network of bike lanes. So if you can give bicycling a try, you might find that it works really well for you.
I think there is a whole cocktail of factors that have created this roadrunner, fast-forward culture of ours. Urbanization, industrialization, you know, creating machines that allow us to do things faster and faster. Then more recently, the explosion of information technology, which conditions us to expect everything to happen at the speed of software or the click of a mouse. The consumer culture, you know, hyper-consumerism, pushing us to want to experience, consume everything, to have it all, to use that expression from the women's magazines. And I think also there's a deeper driver here, and that is a kind of metaphysical question. You know, speed becomes at some point a mechanism of denial. It's a way of running away from deeper, more difficult, more frightening questions with an encounter with yourself. And that's why therapists often describe the final stage before burnout as one last burst of acceleration, you know, as the person tries to outrun all of his or her problems before smacking into a wall and having to face them straight on.
I also think that we are, and this has been maybe a 60-year phenomena since World War II, and I think that we're starting to push back. So I don't know that it is our human nature. I think it's something that we embraced as came along, as all good things do, but that now our human nature is pushing back and saying, whoa, too much, too fast, too much of everything. It's time to slow things back down. And I know a lot of people are starting to say they want to slow life back down again. It's just too hectic. And it's not just older people. It's, you know, young families wanting to spend more, as you said earlier, family time, like family dinners, things that all kind of just got left.
The slow movement is a cultural revolution. It's a reaction against the dominant culture, which tells us that faster is always better. But the slow philosophy is not about doing everything at a snail's pace. That would be ridiculous. Slow, with a capital S, means doing everything at the right speed. So understanding that there are times to be fast, times to be slow, all those different speeds in between. It's about doing things not as fast as possible, but as well as possible. And once you change that chip in your head, you realize that it can revolutionize everything you do, from the way you eat, the way you make love, the way you raise your children, the way you work, the way you do everything.
So whenever we talk about anything, if we say I need to check my oil in my bus, you have to multiply it by 1,000 times. So 1,000 buses, so any little change, some customers think, well, just make my bus come on time, but there's 1,000 buses out there in order to do that. So just the complexity of all those things working together, and how in awe I was when I first came here to see those 600-700 buses roll out in the morning right on time and meet all those schedules. So we're one of the very few businesses that publish our schedule to the minute out in the public, and that expectation is set for us. So it's interesting for the public to see, and when we started to do some open houses where we bring them in and they can see some of the complexities of changing 1,000 buses worth of oil and loading up 26 million liters of diesel fuel over an annual basis, delivering and scheduling 2.6 million hours of transit service. Just the volume of what we have to do, it's immense. And without some of the strong systems and the dedicated employees, it would be tough to do that. So those are probably the two things, the people here that make it happen and the tools and the processes they use in order to do it on a daily basis.
So we've noticed a bit of a shift in mindset in the last couple of years at MEC. People are going to be out in the mountains on the weekends, and then they're going to be commuting during the week. So we've expanded our line in the last couple of years with a focus on this active outdoor lifestyles. That's included running shoes, that's included bicycles as well. It's been, again, a bit of a different focus for MEC, but we're really happy with it.
When I tell people and then they talk to you a bit about it and they learn from you, they're starting to say, that makes sense. I didn't think you could do that in Calgary, because we've been a very car-orientated city, and I think it's changing. It's good.
We get a lot of kind of that reaction from friends of ours. They think we're kind of crazy. We 3 kids and 1 vehicle, and the question is, how do you do it? And maybe I don't have a great response, and the best response I really have is it is possible, with the infrastructure we have, with Calgary being the way it is, with the plans that Calgary's making. It is possible. I think maybe it's giving up some of that, convenience, some of that instant gratification that you maybe get from a car and driving by yourself in a car and, going from your driveway to your parking stall. Those types of things, if you can give them up and realize the real benefits of walking and even being on a bus. And, bus is a social kind of environment too, right? I've met some interesting people on the bus too. And
that point, it is possible, I think, is a point that doesn't really land home until you try it.
The question is, what do individuals do now when the infrastructure and the culture for walking and cycling and transit, mostly walking and cycling, may not be there, and the community in which people live may not be set up for getting around the city in those ways. And that's very difficult because most of the city's built. We have over 1 million people today, and the city is built for those people. And we've already designed the suburbs and the adjoining industrial areas, the road networks. All of those things are very, very difficult to change. And so we know how to design things from scratch, from a clean sheet of paper, much better than a lot of what the city is like today. But to change that city is very, very expensive and very challenging.
When you're tackling a difficult, complex problem, there are a number of different levers you can pull or different approaches you can take. And I think often the first step towards coming up with a good solution to a difficult, hard problem is to admit failure or admit to mistakes, which is something we find very hard to do nowadays in a culture drenched in self-esteem, a culture where everybody's bigging themselves up and painting a perfect portrait of their lives on Facebook. We don't like to say we've made a mistake, but actually if you take the time to admit an error and deal with the emotional fallout, errors can actually open up the path to all kinds of new ways of thinking. They rotate the world, allow you to see things differently. They can be a trampoline towards unlocking secrets and parts of a solution. So I think a first step towards tackling a difficult problem is admitting a mistake, usually. A second step then is taking time to think, just to think in a meandering, deep, richer, nuanced kind of way so that you really get to the bottom of the problem, because so much of our knee-jerk thinking touches the surface of things. We need to work out how the dots connect up. We need to work out how these systems fit together so we can start to fix them. Another ingredient of the slow fix, if you like, is working together. Because that image we have, handed down from the days of the Renaissance, of the lone genius disappearing into a cave or going off into the forest and coming back a month later with a perfectly formed solution in his hand, usually, is, even if that was true then, it's certainly not true now. The difficult problems we face today will require multiple minds, different people, different perspectives, mashing up the disciplines, the arts, the sciences. That's how we're going to cope with and come up with good solutions to difficult problems. And then another way to think about the slow fix is the importance of embracing and feeling comfortable with and tolerating uncertainty. Again, this is something we find very unnerving and scary in a world where we love plotting everything on a graph and boiling everything down to a PowerPoint slide and outsourcing most of our thinking to algorithms. You know, we know actually from all the human history that any creative process, whether the arts or sciences, involves some moment of uncertainty. Not sure, it's a bit blurry, it's a bit foggy, you can just about discern the silhouette of what's coming next, but you're not sure, and it's in that phase of not knowing that a lot of the deep creative stuff happens, and often you go through it, you come out the other end, and you've got a breakthrough of sorts.
I recently spent some time in Berlin, and I was very impressed by all the modes working together and understanding and expecting cyclists, and the pedestrians expecting cyclists. Before they step off the curb, they're looking for cyclists. And of course, the motorists are looking for cyclists, and the cyclists are looking for those other modes as well. And that is a cultural thing that takes time. And for a city to get there, it'll take a long time, but we have plans in place to get us from where we are today, and we're making progress to get to the stage where we're like a Berlin, or some of those European cities are very far ahead of us in terms of having equal distribution of how people get around. And they don't do it because they hate the car. They do use these other modes because they simply work better for them, and that's where we want to be.
sweet.